All right, welcome everybody into the Tack Box podcast. This Tuesday afternoon that we're recording, April 22nd, is the episode or the date for this episode. And Dale and I in this episode today want to talk about record keeping. So we have something on the agenda today for people like myself that are just maybe getting ready for their first litter. I have a few dogs, and we also have some information that's going to benefit the people that have been around for eons and have done this a ton of time. Everybody will be able to learn something out of this episode. So let's welcome in the co-host Dale Martinson. How you doing today, Dale?
Hey Tyson, everything's good. This is our great time of year in Texoma.
Texoma, that's right. So you're like right on the border of Texas and Oklahoma.
Yep, right there.
You get the amazing spring weather where it's like you can walk outside with a jacket in the morning, warm up in the afternoon, but you're you you're like the opposite of South Dakota. South Dakota, we're just like our fall is like, oh no, winter's coming. It's nice outside now. It's not burning hot, but man, where you're at, it's like, oh no, summer's coming. It's gonna get extremely hot.
Extremely hot. That's where we start. Once we turn on the big fans, because we get the big ass fans and we turn them on. They don't turn off for like 6 months. They just blow. It sounds like you're in the airport, because the fans are moving the air around and stuff. But in fact, the other night we had a tornado uh, warning, and that started going off. I was so tired. I told Jane, I'm like, I don't even want to get up. If it hits, it hits. I'm just too tired to do anything about it. And I said, I figured, you know, you're gonna go one way, you're gonna go another, but I'm gonna have to sleep if I'm gonna deal with any of this. So, she's like, really? Like, yeah, too tired. But yeah, we had we get some weather on through Oklahoma, Texas, on up into Arkansas, Missouri. This is our little time of year for that.
So you're not directly in Tornado Alley. It's more north, isn't it? Or are you pretty?
Yeah, right up through. It goes right up the center of the state, right through up through Moore and all that stuff like there. Where I mean, people build, it blows down, they rebuild. That kind of thing.
Blows down again. Yeah.
Close yeah, but we're close to the water, and we just don't get that. We'll get some heavy winds and some rain and stuff, but not anything too bad. That's probably a topic later on for a podcast. We got because disaster relief and all of that stuff. It's one thing when it's just like yourself, and whether you may or may not be too tired to get out of bed. If you have a bunch of animals and that happens, you have to have a plan in place, and you have to have a place where we're going to do it. American Kennel Club has a disaster relief organization, but you have to have an emergency plan for your kennel as well.
So is continuing to sleep through the tornado sirens, is that on the emergency plan, or is that just like,
It,
don't do this?
it
Yeah.
it's on the don't part. Don't sleep through. It's like get up, do something productive. Look like you're in charge. Like you're like look out, see if there's a cow blowing by or something like that. But yeah, it's not there. It's not on the list. But it's sometimes
There,
that happens.
there there's the realism side of things too. You can have a big plan in place, but man, sometimes when you got to have that human aspect of it of I'm exhausted and I watched the news before I went to bed, and it probably won't get that bad even though the sirens are going off and I'm
What?
tired. So,
Yeah. What are the odds? Sleep.
yeah.
You know.
Hey, it played out good for you this time. So,
Yeah.
uh,
And next, I'll jump into action. If possible. Well, and So what's our topic this time?
so our topic today, and as I mentioned in the opening, we can have so many different topics. And one of the things that I want to be able to try to bring to people with this podcast is I want to be able to give information to people like myself that are maybe just starting, and then people like you who have been in it for so long that it's like reading the back of your hand, and there's a lot of things that maybe you don't think about because you've been doing it a certain way. So today I want to talk about record keeping and what there's so many different aspects of record keeping. AKC just did a live stream last week about inspections, and
Yes.
they were talking about record keeping on that and what it looks like when an AKC representative comes through and inspects your kennel. And that just kind of got me thinking how important some of that is. But even beyond that, the ways of record keeping, pen and paper, pencil and paper, binders, how long you got to keep it, uh, digital versions. So I don't know how deep you want to dive in. I think we'll just kind of start rolling with record keeping and we'll just dive in from there.
We got three aspects of record keeping. And the one that Marcus Bach, super great guy from AKC, talked about was the inspections and stuff. And so we have one part of your record keeping, which is your stuff for the American Kennel Club. And this is your dog identification. So, God forbid the tornado takes us out, but leaves the kennel untouched. How do we go in there and identify those dogs? How do we go ahead and decide this is this dog, this is that dog? Because people have a tendency to like, well, I know my dog, but you might someone going in and say, well, there's 7 black and white male Japanese chins. Well, it's Peter. I mean, so there's all of the stuff where they have requirements of microchips and being able to keep the records and stuff. But what I would like to talk about, the record keeping, I would like to talk about is the other two branches of it, kind of like a Star Trek captain's log. Um, the other parts of keeping records is your breeder records. And AKC, they want you to keep track of who you sold what to, when, and who's who, and all of that. That's great stuff. That's good information. You should know that. The next thing you need to know is all the why. So, and I mean, and we do an online uh, record keeping system, which is awesome, where you can print off your shot records and all that. That's really great. But we also have some hard copy stuff, and on those hard copy files, we go ahead and we keep like the physical rabies shot for which is required with our state license. We keep the hard copy of the AKC papers. We keep hard copies of health testing. Just but on the folder itself, we go into deep details, just random notes like this dog comes in season twice a year. This dog comes in season once a year. This dog, she climbs this dog here, all of the things about keeping that dog, housing that dog, all of the things that, because there's sometimes things will happen in like with your litter and you think of like, well, I'm not going to forget that. And 8 months down the road, you've forgotten that. And so you should keep really in-depth records, just notes, doesn't have to be anything great on your individual dog and like how the whelp went, how the cycle went, how she was with the puppies, the birth defects, any imperfections in the puppies. Like you've got this perfect male puppy 2-3 years around the road, but we kind of might have forgotten there was like maybe 3 mismarks in that litter, So those are things those are records that are priceless to breeders. Keeping those records.
So is it, I know we don't want to talk a ton about the AKC side of it as far as tracking, but is it safe to say microchipping is just the way to go for multiple reasons, like microchip your dogs?
It is everything. I mean, the microchip, because back in the olden times we would tattoo them. That we are so past that. You know, I mean, the microchip, you can chip them. You can chip your babies. Like if I'm gonna like commingle litters, like for one reason or another, this female has more milk, or she this or that, or this puppy needs to go move them around. You can chip those puppies before their eyes are open, and so you can tell exactly who's where, you know. And some breeds, it's like are more definitive with color and markings. But imagine if you had 11, you know, yellow labs. How would you know? How do you know whose puppy you have the deposit on? How would you know? How would you know? Well, so those chip numbers are hugely important for starting the individual records of that dog, even down to the point of like with your sales, like, because sometimes people will put a deposit on a dog and then they'll like maybe get the dog and go, "Well, is that the same dog?" Well, yeah, it's chipped. We're gonna or if un, unfortunately if a dog gets out, gets picked up, that's how it's going to get identified. That's how it's going to get back. That the chipping is everything super important now.
We might not think about it in the Japanese chin world nearly as much because you're talking a litter of 3 and you can generally tell them apart, but I could see an issue, like you said, where maybe you have a litter of 10 golden retrievers and somebody comes and picks one out at 5 weeks old, puts a deposit down. How do I know that I got my puppy that I picked out? Well, because you chip them, and that's how you know. So I think it can help eliminate some issues with buyers, but it's also a nice feature I feel like to have as a breeder to give to potential puppy buyers when or, say I buy a puppy and it has a microchip in it. That's just a bonus for me rather than I have to now chip this puppy that I bought because you're going to end up probably chipping it anyway. It's safer for everybody. We don't want these dogs running around not being able to be identified if they were to escape or something like that. We want to be able to get the dogs back home to us if we're the owners, or if we're not the owners, back to their owners. So I think I just wanted you to clarify that, like microchipping, and it's easy enough to do that random household breeders, you're breeding, you can do a
If you
microchip.
if you can give a shot, you can put a chip in. It's super simple. And even like say for example, um, you buy a puppy or you got a deposit on a puppy, and I take the puppy over to get the vet check before it leaves. Well, the vet check should include the puppy's chip number. It's like the VIN number on your car, you know. So whatever the health records with that puppy, which are confirmed with that puppy, so it kind of adds a level of credibility, and like, I mean, I know we should all trust each other, but a lot of times you're talking to people online, you don't know them, they don't know you, and it's kind of important to be able to have that kind of like I think it sets you another level up as far as how serious you are, and I think people appreciate that. I think they kind of expect it and demand it.
And it's really I don't think that expensive. I was looking at it. It's like if you buy them in bulk, I mean, the most expensive part is getting started probably because you need to, if you're gonna have a scanner to be able to scan them, which I would just assume just buy a bundle and get the scanner with it so you have a scanner. But is there a brand you would you just go with the AKC Reunite brand and so you can go through the whole Reunite portal, or is there cheaper
Well,
alternatives, or how do you recommend that?
I only use the Reunite chips, and they have a really great program that's like as you go ahead and place a puppy, as they go ahead and they register that chip, in that puppy, then you get points for free chips. And so, I mean, as your puppy buyers register their chips, then you're getting points towards free chips in the future. It pays for a lot of that. There's a couple of different scanners you can buy online. I've got a couple of the cheapy knockoff ones, and I got my good AKC Reunite one. I mean, you can use the little knockoff ones; are kind of handy to, I mean, they're inexpensive, but if you don't use it often or anything like that, then sure, go ahead get cheapy, I guess, if you want. But they'll last forever if you don't drop them or don't drop them a bunch. But yeah, they work really well.
Okay, so we can move on with that because we we wanted to talk about the other branches, but I felt like the foundation of keeping records is being able to keep track of what dog is which is done through the microchipping. And so I feel like that's kind of the foundation of every record keeping that you're going to have is this microchip and the microchip number. So we got the foundation. Now let's talk about other records. So
So
you mentioned that you have hard copies. Is it you basically if you get a health report, you get anything sent to you from the AKC, it should just go in a folder, right? There's no need to get rid of it. Just if you get a hard copy in the mail, go ahead, print it out. Well, you don't even have to print it out because you already got it. have a folder and a filing cabinet for each dog, right?
Absolutely. It's pretty simple. I mean, I keep all of my litter sheets where the who got what puppy and all that. I do all that online. But I on the actual folders for the dogs, I keep their registration, I keep their any kind of vet stuff I have, their rabies and stuff. But on that stuff, I mean, I like keeping all of the little details about that dog. Things that you are going to forget, things that you are handy to know, things that like, just the all sorts of stuff, every little quirk that you have about that dog. And even like when I go to, with my female dogs, if I have someone that gets a puppy out of them and they say, well, we might like to have the mom when she retires, I'll put that on their folder. The Joneses would like to have Wilma when she retires, and their email and their phone number, I mean, just all of that kind of stuff on there, things that you can use in using that dog for breeding, for the things you need to know. It's like this litter was really easy, it was really fast. She had difficult time. I had to section, when the stitches came out. Just the I just keep all of that, just little cliff notes on there. And so if I have a question about that dog I can just like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm not going to do this. Don't breed her this way. I got bad bites. Just things on there like that. Those are really super handy, and it can help you not make the same mistake multiple times. And it can really make a big difference as far as like if when you were talking about like your progesterone testing, like okay, we tested her, she was only in heat for 5 days and she was ovulating, so okay, she rises fast. So this is good information to have for in the future. And it's not required by AKC, but I think that it's a huge plus to have for your kennel, your breeding program, your dogs. It'll save you money. It'll maximize your efforts because you can't remember it all, and you're not going to remember it instantly. Your other thing that is really important with your record keeping. Oh, and also like if you have deals involving these dogs, if you have little wheelie dealies going on, like I owe this person a puppy, or I owe that person a puppy, or this is this or this or that, that should all be there too. Because anything happens, I was like going, oh, well, this person, there's not a clear title on this dog. This is, or this is what they're owed to get come off of that. That's also anything involving that dog, that should be there. But one thing that I like to keep that I think is really important is records on your shows, and going to your shows and planning out where you're going to go, what you think about the venue. And like after you've been to a dog show, well, you've been to shows. How many times did you find a restaurant that you wanted to use, or found a hotel that you thought was maybe better, or something not listed in the premium list? Those are really great notes to have on hand.
Yeah, so I'm one of the people that feels like you cannot over notate things because when we're thinking about dogs and you're thinking, say you're only breeding 3 bitches, say you have a pretty small operation, you're only breeding 3 dogs. Well, if we're breeding from 2 years old to 5 years old, I mean, that's 3 years. Are you going to remember what that dog had the first litter and the weights of the puppies and all that? Probably not. I mean, we're not in our 20s anymore. No, I mean, most breeders, we're not breeding dogs when we're in our 20s. We're starting our families and doing all that stuff when we get into it a little bit later in life, most of the time. So I'm a big proponent on note taking and not knowing that you can't over notate because as we get older, we don't remember things, and there's a lot of little details that you don't remember. Like you said, say you have a litter of 4 puppies and 3 of them are mismarked, but you hang on to this one, or there's this gorgeous one, you end up showing it, turns into a champion, and people are coming at you of like, what's that breeding? I look at your pedigree and I want a puppy out of these people, and I was like, no, you probably really don't, because 3 out of the 4 puppies weren't good at all. Just we happen to have this one really good one that went on to do something. But you can go back and look at all of that stuff, and that's super important to have that notated. As far as shows, I created an Excel spreadsheet, and if anybody wants it, because you're not good at Excel, whatever, just reach out to me. I'll give you a copy of what it is. It's a really basic Excel spreadsheet, but it I have a tab for every show that I go to where I can put the dogs that I showed, what they placed, how many points they earned, who the judge was, so I can keep all those notes. And I haven't really referenced them a whole ton at this point because I'm still so new to showing. But come the end of the year where it's like we're looking at shows that we want to go to next year. Now it's like we have all the records and the notes from this year's shows. And I like to keep things like, is it indoors? Is it outdoors? Because again, you're not necessarily going to remember that when you're looking and you're like, do I want to go to Billings, Montana? Was that the one that was outdoors last year? Or was that indoors? Was that the one that was indoors and it was so dang hot and the flies were all over the place and it smelled like cow poo? You know, all those things that make the experience either really good about a dog show or really bad. Again, you can't overnotate. So if you go to 10, 5, 18, 100 shows a year, you're not going to remember every single show in the venue. So you got to be able to notate. And like you said, if you found cool restaurants that you went to, or if you go on a roller coaster in the Mall of America at a show and you lose your wallet, like I did this year, like those are all things where it's like, I'm probably not gonna forget that and probably not go on the roller coaster again, but even, hotels, Airbnbs, I will I can go back next year if we're like, "Yeah, let's go to St. Paul again." I can go back in my Airbnb account and look at what Airbnb we stayed in, but am I gonna remember that the beds are freaking awful and that the house was, like, really warm up front and you couldn't heat the bedrooms in the back? I remember it right now because it was just a couple months ago, but in December when I'm booking January's shows, am I gonna remember that Airbnb I stayed in? We absolutely hated it, so let's not stay there again, and let's find a different Airbnb. And was that the place where the beds were really comfy or they weren't really comfy? All the little things that you can think about that make your experience with a show easier, I put in the Excel spreadsheet. And then it's really easy. I mean, judging is a really big record to keep, in my opinion, because you want to know if you've shown to a judge 3 times and they've never put a point on your dog. Maybe if that judge is judging a show and you're on the fence about going to the show, maybe we'll decide not to waste the money on going because that judge hasn't given your dog a point. Probably not going to. Maybe. Maybe so. Maybe not. But
Be honest about it and say, you know, so maybe that judge didn't use my dog. Did my dog show well? Was it in coat? Did I do good, or did I get beat by really nice dogs, or did I not get beat by? So, and that's another thing. You got to put these judges' names and the spelling of their names and where they live, because you'll look at a premium list and it'll say Mr. Wilson. Well, is that Mr. Wilson from Canada, from Toledo? I mean, just figure out so you know exactly where it's like, okay, I really like showing to that person. I don't much, or that person, they like color. They'll use something with color. That's somebody that, they, are just, the things about your experience. The other thing is, you really, those premium lists, and we get super sloppy about just getting yeah, got it. Read them. Read those premium lists because, like, and it'll save you money, because like every show has some free grooming. So do you want the free grooming? If you want the free grooming, then what time does the show site open up? Because if you can leave 4 hours earlier and get the free grooming, okay, that might work for you. You might just need the free grooming. But if you're gonna like, no, I've got to work and I'm gonna leave last minute and go flying out after I was, you know, girl videoing the Chin National, well, then you might want to go ahead and buy grooming because I'm not going to get there until the last moment. So, and that stuff will fill up. So whether you're going to need a camping space or a grooming space, all of those stuff, do that in advance. Know what you need in advance, and that's where you can really find out about your lodging. Because after you've been into an area a few times, because I all the time find hotels that are not on the premium list, and they may be like really great, and cheaper maybe, and so you go in there and find out that stuff, so you okay, I'm going to enter that show. Well, here's the skivvy. I want to stay here. I do or don't need grooming. you know this judge here, I'm going to enter these dogs because I think that this, such and such, because I mean, entry fees are not cheap. And so if I go, okay, well, didn't seem to like fill in the blank, I won't enter that day. I'll enter that the next day. You know, there's no rule says you have to enter everything every time. And you can kind of pick and choose on that too. Or if you only need a major, like, okay, I'm going to enter light, but I'm going to wait and see if there's a major. If there's not a major, I'm not going to go. That kind of thing. You're going to have to, you can pick and choose, but you need to have that information up front as to how you're going to go.
Yeah, and I'm probably too ridiculous with notes. I take way too many notes, and I mean, you mentioned the premium list. It's like I print out once I know that I'm going to a show. It's like I print out the premium list. I like to waste paper and ink and print it out and put it in a binder. And so, like, I have a binder right now that has premium lists for all my shows that I plan on for the rest of the year, if the premium list is available. That way, when we're getting closer to that show, it's like I can put my entries in. And I mean, this is just part of record keeping. If you go to near if you go to a lot of shows, it's hard to remember which ones you've entered already and which ones you haven't. So it's like I always print out my receipts or when I get the confirmation email that I have entered a show, and then I put it in my binder with that show's premium list. So it's like, hey, I got a show in 2 weeks. I entered this show closes tomorrow. I entered this show, right? Like I did. I can go look and make sure that I entered the show. Um, and then once the show is done, I like to print out the results. So that way, and I put it with that, and then I take all the papers from that show and I throw it in a different binder, and that's going to be my 2025 binder. So these are all the shows we did in 2025. It's got the premium list with it. It's got, whatever. And if at the end of the year I want to keep certain things out of it, great. If not, great. But at least then I'll know next year, like, okay, we went to this show. Here's the dogs we entered. Blah 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 blah. And I like taking that stuff with me. And there's multiple reasons why you read the premium list and do that. I mean, I've been to shows this year where it's like you can leave your dogs there overnight, and I've been to shows where your dogs had to be out by 9 o'clock at night. You couldn't leave them there. You need to know that before you book a hotel room.
Good information, absolutely. And then the last part of that with your records, because you have your AKC records that you're required to keep for as per AKC records. And then you have your breeding records that you want to keep so you can make the better choices and stuff. And you have your show records where you can kind of like plan your attack and figure out where you're going, how you're going to do it, what that looks like, what's the potential for that. But then you got the unpleasant subject of money. Or if you're going to be deducting this, if this is an at-home business, if this was going to be how you're going to, all of that stuff figures in. So it's like there's a lot of expense involved. So I mean, might just be your hobby, but if it's going to be something like, oh, hey, I'm going to do an LLC. I want to go ahead and do this. Well, I'm going to declare that any money I make on stud services or boarding or puppy sales, but I'm going to turn around and I'm going to deduct. I'm going to deduct my travel costs. I'm going to deduct my hotel rooms. I'm going to deduct my entry fees. I'm going to deduct all my travel per diem. All of that figures into your expenses. So, and those show records and stuff as far as go, you can that validates your expenses in there, and so you can all of that stuff is going to be decided as far as like where are you going to go with those records. Are you going to use those in your personal return or not? If it's just a hobby and it's like no big deal, it's kind of the difference between having a thrift shop and a garage sale. You do it once or twice a summer, well, that's a garage sale. You're just going to stick that money in your sock drawer. You start doing it to a larger extent. Well, then you're going to have to look and go, that's a pretty significant investment. Do I want to see about taking the extra steps to keep track of these expenses?
And you can figure that aspect of out really, really easy. It's just kind of think of how many shows you go to a year, how many dogs you have, how much you're spending on food a year. Most likely, you're probably losing money, and it would be worth creating an LLC because you can get to write a lot of that stuff off. That's kind of I'm not an accountant, so don't take my word for it. That's just in my humble opinion. It's like if I already have an LLC, so it's like if I can utilize that and write some of the stuff off, I'm gonna utilize it and write some of the stuff off. Yeah, I have to claim sales and income. Hell, I'm new enough. There's no income right now, so it's all just expense. So there you go. And the majority of people, if you're going to a decent amount of shows and you don't have you know, you're not selling 100 puppies a year, you're probably losing money on it anyway. So you could really create an LLC and probably benefit from it. But that's probably a topic for, talk to your tax guy and see, because I don't want to give professional advice on that. But it's something to think about.
Well, absolutely. You really need to look at all of your expenses involved, like all of your and your income too. Like I mean, because well, of course, we're talking Japanese Chin. Well, they're gonna just like one or two puppies, but say you had that litter of golden retrievers you were microchipping, and you sold those 10 puppies for $3,000 a piece. That's a significant amount of money you know so I mean all of those, that's all, but then turn around and you take your showing expenses and all of that. You should keep track of that. You absolutely should keep track of that, and kind of if nothing else, it keeps you mindful of what you're spending. And like, sure, I'm going to haul a dog along for you, I'm going to take responsibility for it and deliver it. I'm going to charge you fill in the blank. I want $100. I want $150. That kind of thing. It's like, well, I was going in anyway. Yeah, but you're saving them having to go, and you're taking responsibility for it. And there's something that goes along with that. You take responsibility, then you're going to go ahead and turn around. You should get compensation.
Yeah, and if this is a hobby that you're into and your spouse is just along for the ride, maybe do the expense side of it when they're not around, because it's probably gonna make somebody sick to their stomach, and it might even be you, of how much you realize you spend in this, because it is a very expensive hobby. But I don't know, there's people that look at it as hobby, and there's people that look at it as an addiction. There's people that look at it as a way of life, and you know, being able to blend all of that together. And I'm the type of person that's like, you know what, I could spend money on a lot worse things. I could be at the bar every weekend, blowing hundreds of dollars a night, and I'm not. I'm blowing money on dog food.
Yeah. Well, also when you turn around and you can decide, because we had talked about before how this is an amateurs and professionals type of thing, and we have people in here who are uh, declare their money that they make. I declare what I make on my dogs. I also expense off what I spend on my dogs. All of that. But someone else who is not on that level of involvement, they're not going to need to do that. But those are good things you should visit with your tax preparer and kind of see in there and kind of see. But the more records and the more in depth you keep on your dogs in every phase, whether it's your showing, whether it's your breeding, whether it's your keeping, all of that stuff kind of like is just invaluable information that you only know by keeping them and only know by having them. And I'll keep records on dogs that have been gone a long time, because I might want to do a breeding that might have a certain dog behind it 3, 4 times. Well, if there was monorchid males in that litter, or if their markings were, or maybe it was a wonderful litter, and I should double on that every chance I get. All of that information is kind of like, it's an open book test, but you do have to write the answers down.
Again, we I feel like we mentioned this a lot today, but as somebody newer getting in, my mindset is keep as many records as I possibly can, because I don't want to be 5 years down the road saying I wish I would have kept those records. It's kind of like, the first of the year, everybody makes New Year's resolutions and they're going to do all this stuff, and then sometimes you do and sometimes you don't, and then you get through the year and you're like, man, if I would have just saved $20 a paycheck, like I said, by now I'd have $10,000 in my account. I should have done it, 2 years ago, and I didn't. It's one of those things where, like, I'm trying to be proactive with it, and you can't ever really go back and make it up. You really can't, because a lot of it's like observational notes. But you're going to be able to make more informed decisions going forward with the notes. So right now, I would rather have way more notes than not enough notes, and then just be like, okay, probably don't need to keep track of that anymore, But maybe I don't need to keep track of, on Sunday, April 15th, I cut so and so's nails, and April 17th, I cut so. Maybe you don't need that detailed of records, but being able to know your business. I mean, this whether it's a hobby or not, it's still there's a business aspect of it, and if you can run it like a business and keep the records, you're gonna have way more success down the line. And I think that goes for people just getting started, but also for anybody that has been doing this for years and years and is thinking, "Well, I never kept records and I've gotten this far." And it's like, well, maybe you want to. You might want to start. That it's never really too late to start, and there's nothing negative about record keeping. You
Well,
also had mentioned. No, go ahead.
well, in even in like we were talking about cutting your dog's nails. So like if you have a leaderboard on in your dog room or where your grooming room or whatever, and you can say Pansy, she got a bath on Wednesday, and you maybe put a note, her ears seemed a little dirty. I'm gonna probably turn around and check that again a couple days later, see if do I need to put some more stuff in her ears or did I get that? When did I give her a bath? Was that this week or was that last week? You know, what day did I give her flea prevention? You know, I mean, if because if I'm supposed to have flea and heartworm, because maybe she was gone to maybe I didn't do it on the first, and so I didn't get her until the 15th. So all of that stuff. When you can go ahead and say, I've got 2 hours. I know these three dogs need a bath. You know, this one here, it's got, maybe I need to check its teeth, maybe I need to check its anal glands. All of that stuff there, just like on that leaderboard, you can look at a glance and go, oh, that's what needs to be done. And so, 2 seconds, but it'll keep like with your show dogs, which ones should you go brush through their ears and put a little mink oil on their ears so their ears don't tangle, you know, that kind of stuff. Just little notes, little things that you can do that you might not remember, and you'll maximize your efficiency.
And it's super easy. We're human beings. It's super easy. And we're in a super fast paced world now. Like this is 2025, it's super fast paced. And I can't tell you how much this has happened to me. My philosophy in my mind, our routine is we bathe the dogs on Sundays. It's just an easy way for me to remember, like, Sundays we're gonna bathe dogs, we're gonna trim nails, we're gonna do the grooming. Well, guess what? It doesn't happen every Sunday because some Sundays we're at shows. So we don't get to necessarily do it that day. And then usually the week before the show, it's like if things are a little hectic, what are you gonna do? You're not gonna bathe the non-show dogs. You're gonna skip them because it's like things are hectic, but I gotta get my show dogs bathed. So then you don't bathe the non-show dogs. Next thing you know, it's been a month since your non-show dogs even had a bath or been examined or looked over, or just had your hands on it in that sort of way. Not that it's neglected, but you bathe the show dogs to get ready for the show. Then you're at the show. Then, next thing you know, a month's passed and your pet dogs haven't had a bath. So again, another good resource, another good reason to be making the notes. You had mentioned earlier about online record keeping. So what resources are out there for people keeping records online? Because this is 2025. Most people are getting into that. They want to do things online. They don't want a pen and a paper anymore. I get it to a point, but I still like my pen and paper. But what online resources is there for record keeping?
There are a couple of really great kennel books type of stuff where you can turn around and you can put your date of acquisition, you can put your shots in, you can even put your breedings in, and you can put all of your new owners' names in. You can put the puppy's microchip name numbers in. There's they had the pet exchange. That's a really good one. There's several of them. There's even a couple that where you can go on and do registrations with the American Kennel Club or whatever registry you're using off of the. But those online kennel books are awesome. I mean, they're great. So there you can, and it just cuts down on paper. One thing we were talking about, like we're going back onto your like how it's easy to get off. Like for me, every Tuesday I check every female dog to make sure whether they're in heat or not. I just that's Tuesday. Tuesday I do that. And so I know that you keep your eyes open, but but Tuesday like a scheduled time, so you're not going to go, oh wow, you left Ralph out. He just bred her. Well, that kind of thing. If you have a set time where you're doing that stuff, you'll be amazed how you can avoid those circumstances. Like, oh, she's starting to come in. Well, we're going to go ahead and not run her in Gen Pop and separate her out because she's in heat and watch her to make sure if she's going to show and her skirts don't stain. She might get an extra bath. All of this stuff that with that extra information that on your records that just keeps you doing better. But back to the online books, excellent, wonderful. And like when the AKC comes to do because once you've had an involvement to a certain number with a certain number of litters and registered dogs, then they go ahead and they deem you an active enough player that they're going to come and make sure that you're following the rules of record keeping and identification. And super nice, like they come out. It's I look at it, and more as people say, "Oh, it's an inspection. It's like they're going to show up and surround your house." No, 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 no. They want you to do well with your dogs. They want you to have the right records, and they're gonna if you don't have them, they're gonna help you learn as to what you need to do to get them. I remember the first time we got AKC inspected in the '90s, and nobody had ever even heard of it. None of my friends, it's like going, "What do you mean? What do you mean records? They don't have records. Where they, I mean, they listen to albums? What do you mean? I mean, no, this is, so, and they had lots of stuff that you were supposed to write down, and nobody did it, nowadays, we have an obligation to the people who get our dogs, as you'd be amazed. Today, I got a call from somebody, got a dog for me 8 years ago, give or take, wants to know, wants to find out information about it, can't find the papers, blah, blah, blah. I can piece it back. I can put it back. Or if someone has something, a dog get loose or get found and they call me with a chip number, I might have that chip number. I might be able to go ahead and access my list and help them get their dog back. You know, so all of that stuff is kind of it's incumbent on you as a brooder to make sure you have that available. But the online stuff does make it super easy.
And I think, one of the things that we promote is responsible breeding, right? I mean, we're going to promote AKC. That's how we help. That's how we register our dogs so we can show them. We are show people. AKC has a lot of good resources. AKC has the breeder toolkit on there, which is free to use. Um, I was digging around on it. There's some things that I can't necessarily do on it just because I haven't had a litter. Like there's certain things that it allows you to do, but you need to have a litter to actually do it. And since I've never had a litter yet, I can't access some of it. But for the most part, you can start with just AKC's breeder toolkit, AKC Reunite. It's going to keep all the records that you really need if you were to get inspected. And I'm using air quotes because I don't like the term inspection. It seems so negative, and it's really like they're there to help you to make sure that you're being a responsible breeder. They're not. I I just don't like the word inspected. They're there more to like, hey, you're doing everything great, good job, or you might want to do this. They're not unless you're doing something really really wrong. You're not going to have any trouble with it. They're more going to help you correct any issues that there might be in a nice, friendly way. I mean, everybody that works for the AKC is friendly, right, Dale?
They're a pretty damn friendly bunch. The the other thing is like when those customers are inquiring and they don't know you. You're just a name on the marketplace. You're a name on whatever online stuff. Well, they go, all right, well, it's an AKC registered dog. That gives you a modicum of credibility that if I send you money in whatever Venmo, PayPal, Bitcoin, whatever, however I pay you, I'm going to then in turn get a dog back from you. And the idea that you are maybe that you're a member in good standing with AKC, maybe you're a breeder of merit with AKC, which is like or a breeder of heart with AKC, which is even more validation and accreditation. Then that kind of makes it be like, okay, well, I trust this guy. I'm gonna send him the money. He's gonna send me a dog. He's gonna send me the dog that I bought in the video, all of that. Whereas, and when he tells me it's a purebred whatever, it's gonna be a purebred whatever. It's not gonna be a schnoodle cross, and all of that stuff. So I mean, it does add a degree of legitimacy to somebody as from the outside in. Like, hey, you want this? The other day there was one of the pretty successful breeder in a breed had some health issues, had to go and had to be uh, go into an assisted living thing. Sadly, those dogs weren't properly chipped, identified, DNA'd, and so here were all these show quality animals that nobody knew who they were. And so they're just lost. They're just like, well, they're just freebies to, whatever the case may be. So when you have quality animals that you have invested time and effort in, and you would want your animals to be, not be in like a rescue situation, or maybe your family might, there might be value to these animals. There might be expensive animals, but if they're not identifiable, then there's value is pretty drops pretty significantly.
So let's talk about just this is just a question that popped up in my head as a newbie. So I figure if I have the question, other people might too. If you if you go through AKC, you reunite, you microchip, does that keep a record log, or is that something where you should keep an Excel spreadsheet of some sort of dogs with the chip number? So say 10 years from now, can you go back on AKC reunite and see all the dogs you've chipped?
Well, so AKC Reunite is going to have a listing of all the dogs that the chips were transferred into those people's. So if they bought the dog from me and they put the dog into their name, well then there's a record of that. And I do encourage people strenuously to send the chips in to get them registered, put them into their name, because I really really hate it when they don't. But I do have on my kennel books thing, whereas if I have the litter chipped and I have them in there, I can sometimes I can back into it, and like there's been sometimes like, okay, well, I bought that chip in 2017, so that means it was a litter born in 2017 most likely. Kind of kind of back into start to where to look. you know it's that they have to do their part. I mean, I'm sure you could go ahead and do an Excel spreadsheet and you know on there. That's probably a little bit beyond my pay grade, but you could do all that. You could keep an ongoing list of your numbers and be able to access it back from that.
Is there really any breeders out there that will like register it for the buyer?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's a lot of people that will go ahead and register. I mean, if you depends how in control you are with whatever situation you have, how much time you have, how many litters you have, how much it's like going, okay, you're gonna come get the puppy. All right, you're gonna do all this stuff, and while you're sitting here, we're just gonna send it in. Well, then that's done, right? That's done. Is that a good thing? Absolutely, absolutely. It's a wonderful thing. I mean, it's a great thing if you floss after every meal. I think that's a wonderful thing as well. You know, for the rest of us that are lucky to do it 4 or 5 times a week, leave us alone. We're doing the best we can. Um, so it's all relative. How much time, how much you can do into, it's a good thing.
Okay, so I guess last question with this. So I want to start keeping online records, and can you and maybe you don't want to. So if you don't want to say specific names because you don't want to promote something, that's fine. Everybody understands. That's great. You can just say, you know what, go on the Google and type it in. Is there any brands of the kennel books, like websites or any that you would recommend? Like, where does somebody start looking? Like, I mean, there's probably 50 out there, but which ones are good?
Um, I think that probably my favorite is the Pet Exchange. I think that's a really good one. There's you can go in there and find out you can find out who what works well with AKC, what should have that there. You could talk to breeder services and get some recommendations who they like to work with, who's what you can go on and do with that, and keep figure out with your breeder toolkit. How much you want to put into that is going to depend as to how active you are. So, like, when you're talking about you've not had a litter yet, it's probably not a pressing matter for you. If you're going to do 6, 7 litters this year, might be something you might want to get onto. You know, I mean, so depending as to your level of involvement as to how much you want to go on with that. But I do think that the online web stuff it does consolidate it. It does keep it nice where you don't have your litter sheets where you have I sold it to Mrs. Smith in this date and here's just her email address. I mean you can do all that. I mean the AKC sends you like litter disposition sheets where you can fill all that out and keep it. And I want to say, you go listen to Marcus's thing in there, but I think that I want to say like 5 years after you got rid of the dog or something like that, something to that effect.
It was
You go
5 years, yeah. You have to keep records for 5 years after the date that you get rid of the dog, yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of thing, But it's a little easier. It's like, and so you don't end up like where you hear the hoarder music, where you're keeping all of this stuff. I mean, online is certainly easier to warehouse that, and then and if you have the information, you know, and the big thing is if they get their chips registered and if they get their stuff then they kind of don't need you anymore, which is a really wonderful thing. It's like, just send me pictures, let me know how you're doing. And, but, if they get their paperwork done right the first time, then you're kind of done at that point where you don't have to go further. You're just kind of keeping your paperwork on your core colony of dogs and your notes on keeping those dogs. And even to the point like when we were talking like the other day, anything happens, it's like I have it right across my thing. Anything happens to me, deliver all of these dogs to Tyson, and I just have your address. So they'll just like bring them all to you. Um, you
Perfect,
know,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it's great. And but you should have those kind of things figured out in advance. Like have somebody that's going to be a contact person that's either going to place, and that should be in your breeding records. Or this one, I got this dog from Barb. It's going back to Barb. If anything happens, offer it to Barb first, that kind of thing. Those kind of things, you should have with your records.
The emergency plan, yeah, and I was actually just thinking about that and talking about that. It's like, yeah, we should probably have an emergency plan in place. You can go down so many freaking roads with an emergency plan, because it's like, what's the emergency plan if a tornado comes in and wipes us out, but not our kennel? We're all gone. Kennel's still here. Now what? What's the emergency plan if only I were to go? What's the emergency plan? What if we say, yeah, the dogs that I got from Barb, they go back to Barb. Well, what if this is 10 years from now and Barb's not around? Yeah, then what? So it's like there's so many what ifs along the way that you kind of have to,
Your
you know,
emergency needs to be addressed every year. And
yeah,
like I have it right inside the door of the kennel. I have a listing where I have AKC contacts. I have the propane people. I have the dog food people. I have my vet's number. I have family members' numbers. I have my neighbors' numbers. I have the people that that have my generators because my kennels are on generators should power go out. I've got all of those contact numbers right there. Sometimes those numbers change but anything happens to me and someone can walk in there, continue the care of those animals and contact these people about placing them and which ones where they should go and all of that. And you should try to always have um, somebody, another person, your designated survivor um, that is going to be in charge of that's going to do the things the way you would want to, because sometimes you see things happen and people are these dogs are in situations and you think, boy, they would really be unhappy if they knew that's what they were doing with their dogs. And so this is your chance to keep control. This is where your chance where you say, I want these to go here, this to go there, I want this person to be contacted for that, you know, all of that. Because, when we're traveling, when we're out and about, when we decide to sleep through the tornado, these things, there could be the possibility you're going to have to make some provisions.
Absolutely. And just like anything that you do, I mean, you don't just decide, "Hey, I need to buy a vehicle," so you go to the car lot and buy the first vehicle you see. You shop around. I suggest doing that with online kennel books too, because there's just from my little experience that I've had with them, there's some that are free and give you some benefits. There's some that you have to pay for that, you're either paying on a monthly or a yearly basis. And they all do something a little bit different. So you have to figure out what works for you and whatnot. But one of the questions I always have is the customer service of them. I would reach out to customer service before you subscribe to anything and just see if they respond and how they are. Because what happens so this is where my mind goes with online record keeping. So what happens if you're paying somebody a yearly fee for online record keeping? 5 years from now, they go out of business. Can I download all my previous records that are there, or are they just like toast because this company went out
We
of
had one
business?
that we had one that had went out of business, and we got a floppy. Excuse me, and we got that. I think I think
For
as much
anybody that doesn't know what a floppy disk is, it's a way to save files online.
I know, everybody else knows. Um, but if you'll go ahead and I think that whenever you're as much as I love a bargain, I don't think anything free is probably too swift. You probably because you have an obligation with those records and it could cause you some trouble. So pay someone a little something that way you can complain and they care a little bit. You know.
Well,
So,
that's the thing with free. Nobody's putting anything out on the internet for free, and they're getting something out of it. They're not just putting it
you're in
out there.
something's happening. You know,
Yeah, they're having advertising, they're selling your information. They're doing something to make money off of you because otherwise they wouldn't do it. And they're not just being friendly and putting all this work into and storing all your information for you and paying to the servers to store it all the things just so you can have it for free. Nope, they're not doing that. They're getting something out of it. So I'm on the mindset of I'd rather pay $100 a year for a service that works good than try to figure out a free one that I want to sleep comfortable at night, and I feel like I'd sleep more comfortable knowing that I'm paying somebody for a service than I'm using the sketchy service and my phone's ringing every 20 minutes from a spam caller because somebody sold my information.
information. Right. Yeah.
That's always a bummer. So shop around.
That's a
Anything that
deductible expense. It's a deductible expense. You can take that right off of your expenses along with everything else. If you're doing enough where you really, you're going to need a bookkeeping system, well, then deduct it.
Well, that's a lot of things that people complain about too. Is like, oh, I don't want to pay $100 a year for this app or for this whatever, and it's like I can't reiterate enough how important record keeping is. And it's like if you're driving a van, a big rig, things like that, it's like a tank of gas a year to
Yeah.
keep records and to be in compliance not with the AKC, but also really it's going to benefit you in the long run somehow, some way, whether you're trying to find a record or you're trying to find some litter information, something. You just spend the money on it. Don't complain about the $100 a year it's going to cost.
It's three entry fees are more than $100, so that's right off the top.
Yeah,
And
that's getting ridiculous too, by the way.
another podcast. But the other thing is, it's like when you're selling dogs and doing transfers, you have a contractual obligation, whether you have sold them that dog for 500 or $5,000, that contractual obligation of your guarantee and all of that, that's something that you need to have, because it's titled property. And so you need to have the records. You're legally obligated to have that. So if you buy the dog, there should be some sort of documentation backing it up.
And that's again why you shop around too, because some of them integrate with AKC really well. For me, I hate doing
Yes.
the same job multiple times. So it's like if I can go in and put notes or utilize my record system and it goes and syncs with AKC or syncs with this or that, or my online has a health guarantee form that I can just, when I'm keeping who I sold the puppy to, it automatically fills out a buyer's agreement and all the things. Like, to me, that's the simplicity side of things, and where paying for something really benefits you because you're paying for the service, and the more it can integrate, the less time it costs you, the less time it takes you, the easier it makes your life. Everything just flows smoothly. It integrates, it syncs, it does all the things. There's so many benefits to it. But again, you got to find what, if you're only selling 3 puppies a year, maybe you don't need something super in depth and you don't mind writing a contract or, a health guarantee or keeping those records, but you're selling, again, it depends on your breed. If you're having 3 breeds of Goldens and you're selling 30 puppies a year, that's a lot of record keeping and a lot of time that you're spending that you could really simplify using online. So I would just start with, just Googling around and seeing what there is. A lot of them have demos, so you can just play with them or free trials and see which one works really good for you and what you're looking for in it. So
Right. I think we gave a pretty good in depth on this one.
keep records, dang it, people.
It's
Just
write
keep
it down.
records.
Yep.
Yeah, and if you don't, type it down. I'm at the age right now where it's like people want to do everything on their phones, and I'm right in that middle age area where it's like I can do a lot on my phone, but I would still rather go sit down on the computer and do it on the computer because it's just easier for me. And like my kids are just everything's on the phone. Like, what's a computer? We don't do anything on the computer. I'm like, I'd rather look at my bank on the computer than on my phone. It's just, I don't know. We're in the good generation here, but
Right.
that that'll wrap up this episode of the Tack Box podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you joining. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch the Tack Box podcast or listen along. Find us on your favorite podcast network. We're on every single one out there that I possibly know of. We also have the Facebook group. We're getting some more questions in the Facebook group, so we're compiling a list for listener podcast. Our latest episode, we drop new episodes every Wednesday, and if you just caught that, I'm catching up with 2025 and the kids lingo. I said we're gonna drop it on Wednesday. I didn't say release. I said drop because I want to be cool.
In
So
real, we're gonna drop it in real time on Wednesday.
yeah, in real time, we're dropping it on Wednesday. So you'll get this episode on a Wednesday. So be on the lookout for that. Just know, like Dale checks his bitches for if they're in heat on Tuesdays. Wednesdays is the day for the Tack Box podcast. Put it on your calendar. Keep a record.
There you go.
Tack Box podcast. And I don't have a time because I haven't simplified it that much yet. It's either going to be when I get up in the morning and I do it, or sometimes I'm proactive and I schedule it Tuesday night, but not all the time. So be on the lookout for that. That'll wrap up this episode. Thanks for listening. We appreciate each and every one of you. For Dale, I am Tyson. Have a great day.